the most dangerous place on earth is the human's mind. It is not the highest maximum security prison, and it is not the Alcatraz Island neither, but it is the human's mind that functions as a magnificent tool for you to create the weirdest, the wildest, or even the realest ideas that can change your life in a mere second. And it is attached up here. Now, before I begin, I would like to do a simple audience sampling. So, could you please raise your hand if you're still categorized as a Gen Z, or you're still on the age of 17 to 24 years old? Right. My next question will be, who here thinks that life is getting more difficult every day? Could you please raise your hand? Right. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you so much for proving my hypothesis. You see, the people who think that life is getting more difficult every day are the same people who are still categorized as a Gen Z. Now, you see, I am also a part of this cool generation called Gen Z, which I am also newly introduced to this glorified yet dreaded phase of life, which we call as an adulthood. Now, I had to question and ponder, why don't my life get easier every time I wake up in the morning? And the premise that I found, life is getting more difficult because we are entering a system where we have no choice but to work harder, to find more money, to compare ourselves to our lefts and rights, and ended up in running out of fuel. Now, for your context, the British Council's Next Generation Report on Indonesia has elucidated that young people, especially us, young Indonesians, we are experiencing a very wide range of issues where our anxieties and our concerns can be listed from the first. It's because of our future. The second, the concern about our education. The third, about our future employment. The fourth is our opportunities, and the last is our health. Now, all of these anxieties are intense and exhausting enough, correct? But unfortunately, this can be further escalated due to this anomaly that we call as a lack of momentum. Now, this lack of momentum is driven by two factors. The first is because of the rising global exposures, meaning the gadgets on your hands right now that can access any information that you need in just a millisecond. And the second factor that drives this lack of momentum is because of the recent COVID-19 global pandemic. Now, this is truly an unprecedented factor where our parents didn't even go through when they're maturing up, right? So it kind of creates an awkward situation where our parents cannot give us the specific decision or advice on how to deal with all of this overwhelming digital era, while we also cannot fully comprehend what is going on right now. And it leads me to a simple conclusion, that we all here are still trying to figure things out together. Now, as a Gen Z, I remember my time growing up and maturing up with gadgets and blue screens filling up all of my sensory system, which unfortunately overstimulating our brain, while simultaneously ripping off the mundane, gadgetless, outdoorsy ecosystem for us to grow up in, and now for us to tap into this adulthood. Now, in the middle of these buzzing digital algorithms, social media contents, we all have these intrusive thoughts. We all have this endless kind of train of thoughts, and it gets overwhelming. And that is why we need to keep the control over our own mind by using the most reliable and the greatest server of all, our brain. Now, I'm gonna introduce you to this thinking technique that will help you to simplify all of your intrusive thoughts and inner monologues. This is called as an OODA loop. So, OODA loops stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. Now, this OODA loop is firstly introduced by that man right there. He was the US Air Force Colonel, John Boyd, where he introduced this thinking technique to help pilots to make quick decisions when they are engaging in air combats. Now, you will see the competitive advantage offered by this OODA loop technique will help you to quickly assess your situation and make a quick call under pressure. Now, you would ask, how exactly would this OODA loop technique help me to navigate my life better? Now, we're gonna do a simple demonstration on the steps of the loop using the most cliche case of all, which is finding a career path suitable for you. Now, to begin the loop, we need to ask ourselves, what is happening around you? Now, this is the first step, which is to observe, because you are needed to find and acquire information in order for you to find the anomaly that you need to solve. Because the more information that you can get, the more accurate your perception will be. Now, we can agree that the anomaly that we are facing right now, which is we need to find a job. So we can agree in that anomaly. Then we can move to the next step, which is to ask ourselves, how severe would impact my life quality? Now, I said that the most brilliant tool is our brain. So sometimes when we encounter a similar anomaly, our brain tends to save up the information of what kind of factors that can hurt or escalate our chance to succeed, no matter how big or how small the decision will be. So in this case, in our simulation, we are trying to find a job here. So I think we would say that it is a pretty huge deal, since it will determine a couple years of our lives ahead, right? So the answer is, it is very impactful and significant as we interpret the problems that we are facing right now, which is to find a job. Now we can move to the third part, which is to decide. Right, so decisions are really only our best guess. Decision is not the absolute truth, nor it is an absolute truth that will guarantee our success in life. No, it is not. It is a work in progress. That's why by asking yourself, would this path lead me to a resolution? You will start to dig yourself up here. You will start to reflect and ponder, what kind of resources do I have to walk down a specific decision? So in my case, let's say, by being an undergraduate in political science, I think I have several resources. Probably my guesses will be a consultant, or a diplomat, or probably a researcher. Now, we can put one of the guess, all of the three, to translate it into that question. Would, for example, starting my career as a researcher would lead me to a resolution or to my goal of achieving my master's degree, for example? And the answer to that question is nobody knows. Because now we have to move to the fourth part. Right. So we have decided that Angela's right here will try her luck in being a junior researcher in achieving her master's degree. Now we move to the last part of the loop, which is to act. Now, in its literal sense, to act meaning that you have to implement your decision. By asking where, when, and how can I start, you can start making a plan to decide to do the decision. Now, as we have decided that Angela here is gonna try her luck of being a researcher, I think I can plan to submit several job applications by the end of this week, for example. So that is a plan, right? So now we have a decision that becomes a plan. One thing to remember at the end of every loop, that once you acted out the decision, the control is not on your hands anymore. So if being a researcher will work out, then that's a relief. But if the decision is not working out, and that is not the end of the world. Because we can restart the loop all over again. And because of that, right. So when we are trying to do an OODA loop, there are two things to remember. The first one is the OODA loop is called as a loop for a reason, because it is the endless circle of life. Because in life, as long as you breathe, the information will keep flowing and flowing. You have to keep adapting, and you have to do the OODA loop all over again. And the second thing to remember is the formula right here. The more frequently you implement this OODA technique, the more accurate and efficient your decision-making process will be. Because you will keep updating this hard drive right here so that it is accustomed to the way you observe, to the way you orient, to the way you decide, and to the way you act. Now, before I learned intensively about this OODA loop technique, I realized that I have applied a teeny bit of the loop steps on my way here. Now, the answers that I shared with you earlier on the table were the exact answers that led me to the position that I'm right now. So from a clueless pandemic undergraduate to a researcher in a think tank that now becomes a shared value family who pushing me to be a greater person than I am right now. And it happened only because I decided and acted on one of many of my guesses 6 months ago. Now, in conclusion, this OODA loop technique is just a mere tool that will help you to get a grip when life slaps you on your face. Because by only answering 4 simple questions, you can reevaluate, you can renavigate your life's position. Because life will not be easier. It certainly will be so much harder every day. So the choices are either you quit or you just power through. Thank you.